Have you ever wondered what a nuclear bomb in Minecraft would really look like? Sure, there are a ton of mods that have already implemented a nuclear device of some kind in Minecraft, but to my knowledge, none of them have properly shown the destruction that a nuclear explosion is capable of. Let's set some basic parameters for context. With some quick googling, I found that the blasts that occurred in Hiroshima and Nagasaki destroyed everything within roughly a 1 mile radius from the center of the explosions. Minecraft uses the distance measurement of 1 meter for every block. There are roughly 1,609 meters in a mile. So to appropriately represent the damage from the little boy or fat man bombs in Minecraft, an area represented by a circle with the radius of 1,609 blocks or a diameter of 3,218 blocks across would have to be destroyed in its entirety. That may not sound like a lot, but that is an area larger than the most zoomed out map that you can create in-game, which has the area of 2,048 blocks by 2,048 blocks. With that in mind, when I set out to write this video, I looked around for some city maps that I could use to appropriately demonstrate an area of that size, and I ended up coming across the Greenfield project. Greenfield is probably one of the largest, if not the largest build project that I have ever seen in Minecraft, and I'll leave a link for you all in the description. Anyway, I just started out by trying to explode areas of the map that match my previous measurements, and of course, despite my test server being quite beefy, I crashed it several times before deciding to give up on that approach. It was clear that with the measurements that I have mentioned before, that I'd need the help of tools that better fit the job. My next logical step was to look at world edit, but even that wasn't feasible at the scale we needed to cover today. Starting the operation just ended up with the server locking up and eventually crashing, just like when I used TNT, so I continued looking. Eventually, I came across a tool that's built on top of world edit called FAW, or Fast Asynchronous World Edit, which allowed me to run my world edit operations over extended periods of time. The end result of such is this. What I've done here is removed 97% of all blocks except bedrock in a spherical radius of 1 mile, exactly matching the measurements that I mentioned earlier, simulating the total destruction of everything here in Greenfield within a 1 mile radius circle. Let's fly through this area from one end to the other and let the scale of this destruction sink in. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in mirroring the Fat Man bomb, everything within a 1 mile radius of the center is destroyed, but that is not the full extent of the damage. It is also said that everything within a 3 mile radius was heavily damaged, so of course I also replicated that with a similar replacement command to before, but with a replacement factor of 70% instead of 97%. You can see that here at the end of our flight, to the far end of the circle where the land and the buildings suddenly become a bit more solid than they were before. This heavy destruction goes beyond our original radius by another 2 miles or 3,218 blocks on each end of the original circle. Here's a plot to demonstrate that. Running the second operation for a 3 mile radius of destruction took my PC with 32 threads and a little more than 19 hours. And that's after it failed the first 2 times around, in addition to the first operation, with a 1 mile radius taking roughly 10 hours on its own. So if you're still watching and found this representation entertaining, please go ahead and leave me a like and consider subscribing. Anyway, my original plan was to show varying scales of different nuclear devices in this video, but given the time-consuming nature of just the first representation, I don't think it was feasible to continue beyond these yet. That being said, I did run the numbers for some of the other devices, including the largest bomb to ever be detonated, the Tsar Bomba. So sticking to our original measurements of 1,609 blocks to a single mile, consider the fact that the Tsar Bomba was said to have vaporized everything within a 3 mile radius. That's 36 miles, or roughly 57,924 blocks in every direction from the center in the Minecraft scale. I can't even imagine how long that would take to represent using a tool like FAW, especially since even on the smaller scale that I started on here, I was getting chunk errors that caused me to do reruns. But it gets better. Remember how the radius of the heavy destruction of our Fat Man bomb was 3 times that of the zone of total destruction? Well, for the Tsar Bomba, it was even more than that, at 150 miles, or what would roughly be 241,350 blocks in every direction from the center of the explosion. With that said, I don't think I'll be creating a 2-scale representation of the Tsar Bomba anytime soon, or at least not with FAW. Maybe something like World Painter if I can get good enough with that tool. If you are wondering how I was able to do this, as I mentioned before, the plugin that I used is called FAW, or Fast Asynchronous World Edit, and a link for that plugin will be listed in the description of this video. The exact commands that I ran were quite simple. For the smaller radius circle of total destruction, I ran a replace near with a radius of 1,609 blocks and a filter to only replace 97% of blocks within that radius with air. Here's what that command looks like. And then for the larger radius of 3 miles of heavy destruction, I ran the same command, just with a larger defined radius of 4,827 blocks, and altered the filter to 70%. Here's what that command looked like. While I was able to get usable footage for this video with those commands, it should be noted that the outcome was a bit glitchy, and some areas still had chunk errors even on my third attempt. The fall plugin is absolutely amazing, but it still has limits, which does not surprise me since I believe I altered something close to about 7 billion blocks between the two operations. In all, it took me about 3 days to get a workable demo video. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and see you all in the next one. Maybe we'll be able to represent Tsar Bomba sooner than I hope.